Tonight, he's accused of having multiple fake online names and a history of deception going back decades.
These people are not alone. It's evident now. We believe there were other people in contact with those names.
A trio of new names used on multiple social media platforms. More on the teacher and coach accused of luring children and adults.
We want people to get this latest version of the vaccine, and it's certainly the one that we expect will be the most protective.
Dr. Janice Fitzgerald rolls out the province's fall vaccination plan, her advice on when to roll up your sleeve. The first in a new series examining the province's housing crisis, beginning with a Band-Aid solution and a community divided over a proposed fix.
This is CBC Here and Now.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. We begin with an update on an investigation into a Paradise teacher and volleyball coach accused of sexual violence. The RNC thinks there are even more fake social media accounts connected to 32-year-old Marcus Hicks. He's facing more than 60 sexual violence charges, some involving children. Police believe Hicks used fake accounts to lure people into sexual encounters while concealing his identity. The RNC says the victims range in age from children to adults. Hicks now faces 63 charges in total, including sexual assault, luring a child, and possession of child pornography. Police say investigations into other offenses are ongoing, and they believe there are even more victims out there.
We're here today to release these names, and you know, that certainly indicates we believe there are other people in contact with those names. The first being username Maria Winchester. This name is believed to have been used historically and may have communicated with individuals across the province on social media and chat platforms. The next being Brittany Campbell. This name was used on social media platforms. And the third is Brad OL15. This username identified as a male and is believed to have communicated on multiple social media and dating applications. A dedicated email has been established to reach the investigative team directly. You can contact the investigative team at trust@rnc.gov.nl.ca with any information.
Now, police say one of those accounts may have been in use for 2 decades. The RNC also had a clinical child psychologist on hand today, offering guidance on how families can broach the topic of sexual violence and safety online. Dr. Janine Hubbard also has a message for victims.
I know a lot of people have been keeping their experience quiet, blocking it out, trying to move on with life, trying to pretend that it didn't exist. Very concerned about stigma, shame, self-blame. Sometimes some new realizations of near misses may have come up with today's new information. It's really important to remember you're not alone, you're not to blame. There is support available. While of course we want to help you to make formal reporting to help with the charges, far more important is your mental health and your well-being, and we want to make sure that if that's the first step that is needed for you, that that's something that's available.
Now, Dr. Hubbard also offered some advice to parents and guardians about how to best approach a conversation with children who may be affected by this case. We'll sit down with Dr. Hubbard to talk about that tomorrow on Here and Now. In health news, the next round of COVID-19 vaccinations will start next month. The province's chief medical officer of health announced October 16th as the start date for the fall vaccine rollout. Dr. Janice Fitzgerald says people can get a flu shot as well as the next COVID vaccine at the same time. With the temperature dropping and school back in session, the province is already seeing a slight rise in COVID cases, but Fitzgerald hopes people will stay home when they're not feeling well, wash their hands often, and get the booster shots.
We certainly are seeing a little bit of an uptick in the community at the moment, and hospitalizations are slightly going up slightly over the past couple of weeks as well. Still not at levels that we saw sort of in the height of things, but, and not causing alarm. I think it's fair to say that there probably has been a bit of vaccine fatigue up to this point. I think right now we're really trying to make a shift to say we want people to get this latest version of the vaccine. It's certainly the one that we expect will be the most protective. I think this fall is a little bit of a reset for us in that regard, hoping really just to look at it in much the same way as we do flu and say, what percentage of people have gotten vaccinated this fall.
Well, a man who was abused by a Catholic priest in the 1960s is growing frustrated with the lack of progress in his civil lawsuit. As Here and Now's Ryan Cook reports, it's been 9 long years and there's still no end in sight. But first, a warning, this story does detail accounts of abuse and will be disturbing to some.
Some days John Doe wishes he never came forward.
Sometimes I think maybe I shouldn't have said anything and just kept my mouth shut. And I would have lived my life and died and not said anything. At least I would have had that peace, which is no peace.
There's been a court-ordered publication ban on John Doe's identity for 13 years, ever since he came forward with allegations of abuse against Father George Smith. Some of that abuse was so horrific, he couldn't tell the court or the RCMP.
To this day, I can't admit some of the stuff that happened to me. It's hard to say that, that you're being sodomized when you're 6 or 7 years old.
Smith was convicted in 2013 and sentenced to 11 years, but only served 4 before getting parole. It's been 9 years since John Doe sued the Diocese of St. George's on Newfoundland's west coast. 9 years, he says, of fighting hurdles put up by the church.
How much longer does the Diocese of St. George's want this to drag out? Another 50? Just get this, give the victim some closure. So we can move on with our lives, right?
A lawyer for the diocese refused to comment on the case, saying it would be inappropriate to comment on something before the courts. John Doe's frustrations are mounting as the church prepares settlements with more than 200 people in the St. John's region. Survivors of abuse at Mount Cashel and other Catholic institutions are expected to be paid out in the coming months. But on the West Coast, John Doe says survivors there continue to be re-traumatized as the civil suit drags on.
This process now has been a part of my life for well over 50 years. And at some point, you just want closure.
Until a settlement is reached, John Doe says he'll continue to be haunted by George Smith and his unspeakable actions. Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, a police officer facing a complaint about his treatment of 2 people arrested and detained in 2017 says he did nothing wrong. RNC Constable Stephen Simmons testified at a public complaints hearing today. Here Now's Mark Quinn was there.
Testifying today, Simmons maintains that he did nothing wrong when he arrested Dennis Ball and his son Zachary. He's accused of using unnecessary force, being discourteous, and arresting the father and son without cause, all in contravention of the RNC Act, and all stemming from a 2017 incident. That's when Simmons pursued Dennis Ball after Ball allegedly swore at him and sped away from the scene of an accident. Ball eventually pulled into his own driveway in Paradise, where Simmons says Ball refused to hand over his license and registration. He said Ball's son, Zachary, ran at him cursing, standing as close as a foot away. Surveillance and dashcam video shows Simmons and Ball struggling before Simmons pepper sprayed Zachary in the face. Simmons says he warned Zachary before he sprayed him, but wasn't sure if he told him he was arrested before or after he sprayed him. Ball and his son were arrested, but charges of obstruction of justice, dangerous driving, and disturbing the peace were later dropped. Ball filed a complaint. While being cross-examined by Ball's lawyer James Strickland today, Simmons repeatedly denied Ball's account of what happened. He asked Simmons if he was certain Ball said, "Get out of my effing way." "I heard him say that 100%, said Simmons. Simmons also denied that he swore at Ball. He said the 2 men's aggressive behavior prevented him from de-escalating the conflict. Chief Adjudicator John Whalen says the hearing is scheduled to continue until Friday. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, a St. John's judge lost his patience with a disgraced acupuncturist today after she once again failed to attend court. Zhao Hong Lu is not licensed to practice acupuncture. She's been found in contempt of court twice for violating court orders to stop practicing. She skipped a court appearance today, leading Justice Glenn Knoll to order sheriffs to find her and arrest her. Lu will be placed in custody until she can appear in court, and after that, she could be facing jail time.
Good evening, Heather Gillis filling in here for Ashley Braweiler. Let's take a look at our current conditions that are outside our studio right now. Here in St. John's, it's overcast, 9 degrees with wind gusts almost to 40 kilometers per hour. And that is, you know, a little cooler than our high today, which is in the mid to upper teens for eastern Newfoundland, getting into the high teens for central Newfoundland, and a nice day on the west coast as well. Cooler, of course, for coastal Labrador, but not a bad day for Lab West and into Churchill Falls. Taking a look now at the weather that's on the way. We've got a risk of frost tonight, so if you have any plants, bring them inside. It could be as cold as -2 in the overnight and be of risk to them. And there is an air quality statement as well, so if you see any whitish skies anywhere in the province right now, smelling any smoke, a really orange sunset tonight, that is because of smoke that is in the atmosphere from fires in Western Canada. Sun and cloud ahead. Here we go, just taking a look at the air quality statement and the frost advisory. We'll have a lot more to say on both of those a little later in the show.
A Labrador town is divided over its handling of the homeless and transient population. Our investigative unit is examining the province's housing crisis in a new series called Sheltered. In Happy Valley Goose Bay, about 20 people are regularly housed at the Labrador Inn. The province pays a nightly rate for a place to stay, 3 meals a day, and security. Between April 2022 and March 2023, that carried a price tag of more than $1.4 million. The province has set aside $30 million for a new 30-bed facility, but not everyone in the community is convinced that's the answer.
I personally have only received one email urging, for approval. The rest of it has been primarily negative comments. If I had to vote right now, if I was walking into this building to vote, I don't know how I would vote. My responsibility as mayor is to represent the folks that put me here.
So what are Happy Valley Goose Bay residents concerned about? Why the lack of support for a housing facility? And what do people there want instead of that? Well, stay with us. We'll return to this story in about 20 minutes on Here and Now. Well, the mayor of Conception Harbour has stepped down. This as the town works to collect hundreds of thousands of dollars in unpaid taxes. CBC has learned Craig Williams has resigned from council and Deputy Mayor Lawrence Penny is taking over in the interim. Williams' wife has also stepped down. The town has been cutting services like garbage collection and street lighting, though Penny says residents who owe have been coming forward. The province has also stepped in to help with the financial affairs. In other news, the Public Utilities Board has made a surprise adjustment to the price of gas. It's down nearly 9 cents a litre today. That puts the price at about $1.85 a litre on the Avalon and $2.09 in southern Labrador. The price of all other fuels remains the same, with the next scheduled adjustment expected on Thursday.
Show us the money. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's Premier Andrew Furey saying Quebec should be ready to pay if they want more power from Newfoundland and Labrador. He was speaking to reporters ahead of a meeting with Premier Francois Legault in Quebec City. Quebec wants more hydropower from Newfoundland and Labrador, and they want to extend the Churchill Falls deal beyond 2041. But Furey told reporters he's waiting to see what Quebec offers.
We'll see what they put on the table. I'm certainly not going to negotiate such a valuable asset for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador in public, and I'm sure you can appreciate that.
But at a press conference after those comments, Quebec Premier Francois Legault took a different approach.
As I've repeated for a long time, and as Andrew said this morning, in the negotiations right now, and you said it very well, on the one hand, we want more capacity coming from increasing production at Churchill Falls and constructing Gull Island. On the other side, what Andrew wants and what Newfoundland and Labrador wants is for us to increase the price as of right now and all the way to 2041 for the electricity that we buy at Churchill Falls. What I'm saying, and what I've brought up with Hydro-Quebec's CEO, Michael Sabia, is that on balance, we need a deal that's a win-win for Quebec and Newfoundland and Labrador. We have to find a balance.
Sounds good for you?
As I suggested, the Premier's gone a little bit further than I would. I don't think it's healthy to negotiate in public. I don't think it serves either one of our interests well.
1, 2, 3, go!
The Manishan Nui Community Gathering has wrapped up for another year. It's one of the biggest events of the year for the Innu people. Hundreds traveled from Shehajit, Natchwashish, and Quebec to Gull Island for a week. It's a chance to get out on the land, reconnect with family and culture. There are a lot of activities, lots of Innu tents, and opportunities for connection.
You know, culture, that's traditions, that's people connecting with one another. You know, it's very open space here, and it's like, you know, you can go to another tent to have a cup of tea, to have a meal. It's not necessarily like that in the community, just because, you know, everybody is so busy. There's so many helpers within the community that are, you know, making sure that programs and services are being offered, and there's a lot that happens in the community, but when you're here, it's like you have enough time to rejuvenate, you have enough time to refresh, and you get to see people that you don't normally see within the community because it's just so busy.
Smoke from Western Canada could affect things here in this province. We'll talk about that and what to do if you're vulnerable to it coming up next.
This weather update is brought to you by Steamatic Canada, the undisputed choice in restoration. Don't panic. Call Steamatic.
Well, Heather, if it seems a little hazy out there tonight, or if some people even smell some smoke, there's a good reason for that, right?
That's right. So we can see, all the wildfires that are burning here in Western Canada, and you can see these orange plumes of smoke on your screen here, and they're coming over Hudson's Bay here and really going to be affecting our province. You can see that there is an air quality statement issued really for the entire province. And according to Environment Canada, this could last through until Thursday. So some people are vulnerable to the smoke. And if you are one of those people, or you have a lung disease or asthma or anything like that, think about, turning on HVAC if you have that in your home. Keep your doors and your windows closed so you keep the air quality in your home good. Or if you have a HEPA filter, you can turn that on as well. So what we're seeing here as of 5 p.m. are some readings for air quality. We can see that there has been some smoke reported here in Blanc-Sablon, and you can see an elevated reading here, and it's the yellow that we're talking about right here for the Northern Peninsula and through parts of central Newfoundland. Well, yeah, you could see probably some smoke, some haze in your area as well. And it looks like the values elsewhere are pretty low. So that is something to think about as we go into tonight and tomorrow. So what we're going to see now in the overnight is some cloud here from Labrador move out, and this cloud here over the island push back in. So we'll have a clear night for many parts of Labrador with scattered clouds, but on the island, on the northeast part of the island here, you'll have some clouds. So it'll be a little bit warmer, but for the west and southwest coasts, this is the part of the island that we could see the frost risk from Environment Canada. So bring your plants in, could be as cool as -2 in some places. And it'll cloud up a little bit in the overnight again as we head towards morning. Taking a closer look at tonight now, single-digit temperatures for the most part here. We'll see, that cloud here for the eastern part of the island with your temperatures 6 degrees for the most part in the east, a little cooler down there on the south coast, fewer clouds as we get to the west coast and the northern peninsula in the overnight. Pretty well a cloudy night for much of Labrador with your temperatures ranging from 3 in the Straits up to 10 in Nain, and not a bad night when we're looking at the winds there as well. Into tomorrow, we'll see some clouds moving down from the north here in Labrador, cloud moving out for the island, but otherwise the weather is pretty quiet over the next number of days. As we head towards tomorrow, things are going to be seasonal here on the Avalon Peninsula with your temperature around 13 degrees warmer with a mix in sun and cloud pretty well for much of eastern Newfoundland. A sunnier day for Marystown, though, as we head into central, a little bit above seasonal here with temperatures 16, 17 degrees for the most part, looking like a beautiful fall day for you folks in central, and even better for the west coast as we could near 20 for the Humber Valley and Bayvert Peninsula. 17, 16 degrees for the west coast. Looking fine as we head to the northern peninsula and in through the Straits and Cartwright as well. And not a bad fall day for Labrador as well. Temperatures between 16 to 19 degrees, though it could get a little bit gusty, 30 to 50 from the west for coastal Labrador. Now, our long-range forecast also looking really wonderful. If you need to get outside, get things done outside your house, well, now is a good time. We'll talk about that a little later.
Well, turning now to the south coast of the island, last night we dedicated our show to the one-year anniversary of post-tropical storm Fiona, bringing you stories from Port aux Basques and Burnt Islands, where residents are still reaching out for help, not just for their homes and properties, but also for their mental health. Here's social worker Cindy Parsons.
We have definitely seen that people have been impacted by the weather and just in changes in, living conditions and transitions. And I mean, it's all normal reactions to difficult life events. I've seen, people wanting to learn new coping skills and just trying to adjust to a new normal. we tried our best to come up with creative solutions to try to reach as many people as possible and to make sure that people knew that they didn't have to be alone through this ordeal and that there would be supports available. There's individual counseling and services through our office here in town with doorways, individual counseling, group services, virtual, telephone. There's services online with bridgethegap.ca, but in that moment people weren't really in a position to be able to access those services. So we decided that we needed to be down on the ground where people were and to try to meet people where they were at and to have those conversations and just let people know that they were here, that we were here, and that they didn't have to face this time alone, and that we had a slogan that basically said, reach out, we're here to help. I see a lot of support amongst each other in the community, like people, you see people in the stores talking to each other and reaching out and being supportive of each other. There's definitely been more acceptance, I think, for that it's okay to talk to somebody, that there's nothing wrong with reaching out for help during difficult times.
It's not the best place, but it's the only place.
Why this man and many others call a hotel home. We return to Happy Valley Goose Bay for our special CBC investigative series, Sheltered, that's just ahead.
Dealer.
Tonight, we bring you the first story in a series from our CBC Investigates team. Sheltered examines the housing crisis in Newfoundland and Labrador, telling the stories of the people living it while scrutinizing the policies and politics behind it. We start tonight in Labrador, where a town is divided over a proposed solution. Now, stuck in the middle are dozens of people whose futures remain uncertain, and it's costing taxpayers millions in Band-Aid solutions. Ariana Kellant reports.
It's a warm night in the town of Happy Valley Goose Bay. Michael Joy is at home at the Labrador Inn. He's been here off and on for 2 years.
It was not the best place, but the only place.
Joy is one of about 20 people who live here and is part of a growing number of people housed in hotels instead of homes. The province pays a nightly rate. Right now, that's $161 per night for a place to sleep and 3 meals. In 1 year, taxpayers spent $1.4 million here, and for security, about $46,000 per month.
Technically, we are a hotel, absolutely, but our largest client at this point would be Newfoundland and Labrador Housing for sure. We've had some people who have hit the 3-year mark and 4-year mark.
Bill Dormady and his staff see it all. People in the throes of addiction, battling trauma passed on from their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Deep wounds of colonialism, violence, death.
We do our best, but other than we have one caseworker 2 days a week, that's basically what we have.
People don't just live at the Labrador Inn, they die here too. Frederica Benuin, a young Innu woman from Natwashish, froze to death outside in January 2022. This year, 2 longtime residents died of natural causes. One, after hearing he only had days to live, requested to return to the Labrador Inn, saying he wanted to die at home.
We're going to help as long as we can, but when it comes to a certain point, they have to find a solution. So as a business, yes, we are a hotel, and we are not a nonprofit. We're a privately owned company, and we're in the business of making money. This whole process will have a shelf life, and there will come a time when we won't be able to continue to house them when we move forward with our other plans, which is not as a homeless shelter or a overflow for a homeless shelter, but an assisted living program and a hotel.
For some, hope lies here, on this barren stretch at the site of a former tree nursery, with promises of a housing hub big enough to accommodate everyone. A 30-bed emergency shelter, 20 transitional housing bedrooms, and 20 supportive housing units, on-site health care, and given the majority of the clients are Indigenous, culturally appropriate programming. The province wants to push forward. $30 million has been set aside for the project, and government didn't create the plan in a vacuum. It was developed with Indigenous communities, emergency shelter administrators, police, and the health authority. But there's a problem.
Well, it's a very contentious issue here in this town. Some feel that there's a divide amongst the town of what they would want going forward.
That division is in plain sight and in the inboxes of local politicians.
So this is a young fellow. I personally have only received one email urging, for approval. The rest of it has been primarily negative comments.
For members of council, all conversations about the town lead back to this.
Oh, I'll just give you an example. We went through a strategic plan. We're trying to update our strategic plan for the next number of years. In every single focus group that we had, whether it was volunteers, seniors, business, every issue circled back to here.
Council will eventually have to vote on whether or not to allow the development because the area is zoned as discretionary use. But Andrews says there are too many unanswered questions. There's a strong desire for the facility to have addiction services and detox, and so far that doesn't appear to be part of the plan. Keeping it status quo is not desirable either.
If I had to vote right now, if I was walking into this building to vote, I don't know how I would vote. My responsibility as mayor is to represent the folks that put me here, and what I'm going to do is take that direction.
The Salvation Army feeds hungry people each week. Out of this van, Byron Keane meets those who are most in need.
The flow of people through our doors is steady. There may have been a small uptake over the past little while, but not a major uptake where we can't handle it.
The Salvation Army is among a group who have been advocating and working toward a new facility.
The hope for this facility is to see individuals who are wanting to come away from homelessness into affordable housing or into housing where they can support themselves, and to give them that sense of freedom, that sense of accomplishment, of getting their own place.
Perhaps unsurprisingly, Keane holds a lot of faith that the town will pull together to make the project happen. The stakes, he says, are too high. It's 9 a.m. and Toby Noah is making his way to breakfast at the current shelter. He spent the night in the woods, nothing new for him, but this time he's been hurt, beaten up overnight. Noah says he doesn't know much about plans for a new shelter. It would be nice, he says, but no one's asked for his opinion.
What do you foresee for yourself for the next year or the next couple of years? Where do you see yourself?
Don't know. Could be here.
Ariana Kelland, CBC News, Happy Valley Goose Bay.
Never before has this province needed change the way it does right now. And if people want change, then I am the only solution that is out there.
We'll get to know more about Lloyd Parrott as our series of feature interviews with PC leadership candidates continues. The province's Progressive Conservative Party will soon choose a new leader, and in the lead up to the vote, we've been bringing you profiles of the candidates. Here now's Peter Cowan is getting to know them, finding out what they stand for and what they want to accomplish. Here's his conversation with Lloyd Parrott.
We're out in the community talking to the folks who want to lead the PC Party of Newfoundland and Labrador. I'm here in Clarenville at Bear Mountain Coffee with Lloyd Parrott. So why are we here?
Yeah, so I guess in 2019 when I made the decision to step into politics, this is exactly where I did it. And at that time it was an old abandoned house, and the current owners, Nancy and Carl Robbins, had a dream to turn it into a coffee house, and they were close personal friends of mine. And on a beautiful Sunday afternoon, I let them know that I was going to step into the political ring, and I decided it'd be a great place to come back and circle around.
Okay, so you got into this race, you were the very first candidate more than a year ago.
Yep.
Has it been a bit of a slog? Normally leadership campaigns aren't, more than a year long.
Yeah, so it's been a long process, no doubt. I didn't come into this process with a big popular name. We knew that it was something that we had to grow organically, and that's why the early announcement. We were certain we were in right away. So yeah, I mean, the last year has been trying. I've had some health issues I had to deal with and different things. But lots of great interaction with the province and communities and groups throughout the province, and it's only solidified the reason why I'm doing this.
You mentioned health issues there. I want to ask you a little bit about that. So first of all, a question that I know you get asked a lot is about the fact that you're missing a leg.
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
So I don't get into great detail, but I lost my leg due to a military injury in 2007. So it's 16 years now. I wouldn't change a thing. I believe it's shaped me into who I am. I believe it's given me a perspective that I didn't have otherwise, and certainly from a leadership standpoint, it's given me the ability to listen, help, and understand things that I never understood before. But this has really put things in perspective for me, certainly with people with disabilities and people who face challenges every day. And I think that's an important characteristic to have as a leader. I always say that if you're going to lead, you need to listen. And I'm not so sure that my listening skills were so great before that.
How big of a challenge has it been to get out there and, especially compared to some of your competitors like Tony Wakeham? He ran for this before, he's already got that machine built up and that experience.
Yeah, so listen, never before has this province needed change the way it does right now. And if people want change, then I am the only solution that is out there.
Why do you say that?
Party. Well, I'll say, when I decided to get in this, I didn't surround myself by party faithful or old hat political people who've been around. I did that on purpose so I wouldn't owe anyone anything when this was said and done. I've ran a very clean and clear race, and people have gotten to know me, certainly. They know me from my time in the House of Assembly, through my time with charity work and other things I've done. And I believe that right now we don't need someone who's running on a family name or who's been a lifelong bureaucrat, and I'm neither of those.
Well, now that we've gotten to know you a little bit personally, let's delve into some of the policy discussions. And first of all, I noticed when I went to your website, you don't have any policy discussions on there. Why is that?
So all my policy discussions have been put up via social media, me talking. I would say that there's a lot of things going on in the province right now, from healthcare to the people's ability to live, to afford to live. And I guess I circle back all the time to community benefits programs, our ability to generate more revenue, a way to look at a lesser amount of spending for certain, our seniors, the troubles they're having, housing. There's a lot of different things that I've talked about in all the videos.
Okay, so yeah, there's a lot to delve in there. Let's start about healthcare, because I know that's on a lot of people's minds. And you've said, as someone who's had a lot of experience inside the healthcare system, you were in hospital during this campaign. You have the sort of knowledge to be able to. What have you learned from your experience having been involved with the healthcare system that you think needs to change?
Yeah, so I'll say the same thing I always say. Leadership starts with listening, and when you're on the inside listening to not just nurses and doctors, but cleaning staff, cooks, all the people involved in healthcare, they'll all tell you the same thing. They're stressed to the max. They don't feel like they get the respect from government that they deserve, and that they need help. And I think a lot of that help comes exactly from management. And
in what form, though?
So we do a lot of things wrong, Peter, and I'll give you an example. Methadone program. I've got people in my district who leave Clarenville and go to Bonavista for methadone, and people from Bonavista who leave Bonavista and come to Clarenville for methadone. It doesn't make any sense. It's managed entirely improperly. I know of cancer patients that live in St. John's who've foregone because they can't afford to go. Now you think about that when there's free busing and programs in the metro area that aren't available in the rest of the island. We need to put a different scope on everything we do, not just healthcare. So the biggest problem this province faces is population and geography. And if we put a lens on rural Newfoundland that makes it different than how we do urban, I think it's the start of a solution. That doesn't mean it solves everything, but if you are an individual who has greater means and you can do something that can relieve a strain, then those people should be given that opportunity. But the people who don't have the means to do it should also be treated equally and fairly and have an opportunity to see a doctor in a timely manner. And it's just not happening. We have a huge fiscal problem in this province that nobody talks about. So my solution to generating revenue would be a community benefits program. I've been a big proponent of that. In 2019, I introduced legislation into the House of Assembly in October of 2019 that was passed 100%. It was for a community benefits program that would see Newfoundlanders and Labradorians go to work first. And me, as Premier, would put Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first.
But isn't the problem right now that there's not enough people? If you look at like fish plants are having to bring in foreign workers because they can't hire anyone locally. That costs them a lot more money than if they could hire someone just down the street.
Listen, I believe that this province needs to invest and very, very, very robustly recruit people to come live in this province full time. It needs to happen. I said a few moments ago, population is one of our biggest issues. We need to grow our population. And if the jobs are here and they're sustainable, then people will come here to live.
One of the debates that I hear internally within the PC party is around how close the provincial party should be to the federal Conservative Party. How would you say your views align with Pierre Poilievre, the federal leader, and the federal Conservative? What's one thing that you sort of agree with him, and what's one thing where your views might differ?
Yeah, so I would say that absolutely when I hear Mr. Poilievre talk about oil and gas and development in this province, I agree 100%. I believe that LNG and our offshore is still our silver bullet to a green future. You know, the federal government talks about things that I don't necessarily align with. I was asked the other day how I felt about abortion and a woman's right to choose, and I can tell you, I believe it's a woman's right, and I don't believe there's any man on earth that's equipped to make those decisions for a woman. So I will say a Lloyd Parrott government would put men and women in Newfoundland and Labrador first, period. Not the federal government or not any other entity, but I could work with any government that was in power.
I want to ask you about the environmental, because you talked about your support for oil and gas, and a lot of people though feel that we need to be getting to net zero a whole lot faster. We need to be producing less oil. We need to be consuming less oil. There's still too much greenhouse gases going. So if we are essentially trying to say, we want more projects so that we can use the revenue, aren't we then just further contributing to the problems of things like Hurricane Fiona and, you know, the impacts that we've seen from climate change on Newfoundland and Labrador?
If you want to talk about the environment, you want to understand what it means to change, I would say this: when we look at people that are living in Newfoundland and Labrador housing, and you take into consideration that these are the lowest income people in the province that are being funded by government, this government has not put one heat pump in one unit. That should be their priority. Instead, we try to fund people to put heat pumps into houses that, and people just can't afford to do it. But government isn't, they're not speaking the same language. When you look at the south coast of Labrador, you've got a government now that's looking at putting a new diesel thermal generation plant on the south coast of Labrador. When they, in the next breath, they talk about the environment. We need to transition, and the way for us to transition is to create revenue in order to do that. And part of that is our oil and gas.
Well, an interesting discussion. Good luck in the race, and thanks for chatting with me.
Thanks very much.
The Speaker of the House of Commons, Anthony Rota, has announced his resignation from the post.
I reiterate my profound regret for my error in recognizing an individual in the House during the joint address to Parliament of President Zelensky. That public recognition has caused pain to individuals and communities, including the Jewish community in Canada and around the world, in addition to survivors of Nazi atrocities in Poland, among other nations. I accept full responsibility for my actions. My resignation is effective at the end of the sitting day tomorrow, Wednesday, September 27th, to allow preparations for the election of a new Speaker. Until that time, the Deputy Speakers will chair the House proceedings. Thank you. Merci.
On Friday, during the visit by the Ukrainian president, Rhoda introduced a Ukrainian Second World War veteran. He didn't realize the 98-year-old had fought with a Nazi unit. MPs rose twice to give the men standing ovations. Food Banks Canada has released its first ever poverty report card. Just over half the governments received a grade of D or lower, with Quebec scoring highest and Nova Scotia failing.
Governments have been graded based on how they compare with each other on real lived experience of poverty, statistical measurements of poverty, a standard of living, and government progress on passing anti-poverty legislation.
Key findings include more than 42% of people feel financially worse off compared to last year. Almost 1 in 5 reported experiencing food insecurity, and around a third say they were coping with an inadequate standard of living. The report comes at a time when food bank visits are at a record level. This province received a grade of D-.
Welcome back to the show. Taking a look at our long-term forecast here now over the next couple of days. Our look ahead now to Wednesday evening. So we can see pretty cloudy skies for the most part there over Labrador, and that will basically push down over the island as we head into Thursday with pretty well clear skies for coastal Labrador and through parts of central Labrador, southern Labrador, and much of the island as well. Taking a closer look now at what things will look like. Looking like a pretty decent day on Thursday as we head towards the end of our work week with temperatures in Labrador. Look at this, 20 for Lab West, Happy Valley Goose Bay in Nain. A little cooler on the coast there in Labrador, and things in the high teens for the west coast of the island, but a little chillier for the east coast here, about 17 degrees forecasted as we move towards Thursday. As we look a little further afield now, you can see that cloud in Labrador will sweep down across the island. So, you know, not busy weather, just pretty quiet weather for the rest of this week. And we see a lot of sun and cloud icons, but we'll have some of that warmth move down this way to the east coast of the island with those 20-degree temperatures for Friday to round out your work week. As warm as 21 forecast for Grand Falls, Windsor, and into the mid to upper teens for the rest of the island, and even into the Straits. Not a bad day for Lab City, Happy Valley, Goose Bay, but you know, Nain, 9 degrees, you're down to the single digits compared to everybody else. Taking a look at our 5-day forecast now, lots of sun icons in your forecast there with your temperatures from 13 to 20 degrees, dropping down for the first half of the week into the single digits in the overnight. For the western and central regions of the island, not looking bad. Lots of sun and cloud again in your future. Temperatures mid to upper teens, up to the 20s for central, a little chillier by just a degree for western Newfoundland, and looking really good for Labrador West as well. A little warmer for the east coast, and then just a degree cooler there really for most of the week for Lab West, with a chance of showers on Sunday, but looking really good. And this is our weather picture, the Lonely Goat. This comes to us from Greg Horner, and if you have any pictures for us, you know where to send it, right there on the bottom of your screen.
Oh, I love goats. They're so silly.
Aren't they? This reminds me of the Lonely Goat Herd song from The Sound of Music.
Oh, nice, nice. Great shot.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Greg. And Heather, I must say it's so nice to see you because it's been a while. You've been off for like a month?
Almost a month. Yeah, I took all my holidays at one time and had a nice vacation.
Yeah, well, it's great to see you back.
You too.
All right, that's it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good night.